It's time to talk about all those books that I read in the month of May. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Chris and today's video is about all those books I read in May 2022. I read 7 books over the course of May, all within a 3 to 5 star range, which is excellent, a very good reading month. Now 3 stars for me are not bad books at all, it just means that I had a good time with it. There were things that I would have liked to have been done better or explained more, but I had a good time. I'm probably not going to pick it back up in the future. So I'm going to run through them from my least favourite to my favourite, but none of these are bad books in their own right. Starting with book number 1 for the month, Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames. I know a lot of people really love this book for what it is. They think it's the funniest thing on the planet. They had a really good time, great action adventure story, and I will credit it. This book did have its funny moments, but for me the structure got quite repetitive, which took me out of the book. I had a good time, it definitely had its tender moments, it had its funny moments, it was an amusing book. It's not sort of super grimdark, it's taking a look at that sort of grimdark genre and having a bit of fun with it and encouraging the reader to laugh along with them, and that is done quite well. Some of the humour was lost on me, some of the musical references were lost on me as well, not growing up in a time when the songs that were referenced, there were a couple that I did understand but weren't prevalent in my life, so I think a lot of that was lost on me as well in my reading experience. But in terms of a repetitive structure, it would get to a point, now I listened to this on audio and I find Jeff Harding to be a little bit hit and miss for me as a narrator, but as he was narrating this book, I would get to a point in my head where I was like, alright, well in about an hour and a half we're probably going to do this, because we've done that periodically throughout the book, and I would hit the mark almost every time. So the structure was repetitive, but it is a fun adventure. We're following a bunch of mercenaries who are getting the band back together for one last job to do things that I can't tell you because of spoilers. But we follow essentially Clay Cooper and his band of misfits. They're all getting back together, they're all in middle age, to go through the heart of the wild one last time and face a whole lot of dangerous things to get to the end goal. I had a good time. I am still interested in reading the sequel, which is Bloody Rose, at some point in the future. I just don't know when I'm going to get to it. The next book that I read this month, and I think I rated this one 3.3 and then I ended up rounding it down 2 or 3, is Exile by R.A. Salvatore. I really enjoyed this book, and I've so far enjoyed The Forgotten Realms. I mean, I'm only 2 books in. Book 1 has this familial political undertone, and the machinations and the family politics are just insane, and it really builds this world up, as well as this main character Drizzt. In book 2, we're very much focused on Drizzt and his development as he goes through the Underdark, and he's very lonely, so he wants to find friends, and then building friendships with unlikely people along the way, and then towards the end of the book those familial sort of political elements come back into play to build that storyline up. These things, I can't remember their names, I'll put it in the screen. I'll put it on the screen, but they were like brain suckers. I don't know what they were called. I don't know. I wouldn't want to face one of them, but I had a really good time with this world, and it's one of those things that even though I can't remember everything about it now, I'll pick up the 3rd book and I'll be instantly transported into this world. I think so far R.A. Salvatore has done a really good job of making his world visual, getting the reader to understand the world that we're in. So I had a good time with that one, and I'm looking forward to continuing the series. The Forgotten Realms, probably a palate cleanser series. I mean, there's 400 or so books in it. It's not something that I need to retain all the information before jumping into the next book, so it'll just be interdispersed between other things that I'm reading. So there's that one. The next one that I read, I don't have the physical copy anymore because it was my father-in-law's. This is Beyond the Shadows by Brent Weeks, book 3, and the final book in the Night Angel trilogy. Now, I said in my vlog that I understand why people didn't like the end of the trilogy, and they felt a little bit let down by Brent Weeks. There was a lot of build up for not a whole lot of payoff in some people's opinion. To me, I enjoyed this book for what it was. I gave it a 3.5, I think, which was the lowest rating of the books in the series. So the book 3 wasn't my favourite, but I do think that there was a lot of foreshadowing that was done in books 1 and book 2, which did pay off somewhat in book 3, and it did have to sort of do that third book thing, particularly in trilogy, where they sort of up the ante and then have a really fast sort of conclusion to the story. So I liked it for what it was. I liked the entire series for what it was, and if I look at it just on a purely enjoyment level, I had a good time with that book, so I gave it the 3.5. The next one I picked up was a new release this year, which was City of Dusk by Tara Sim. I believe I gave this a 3.6, maybe a 3.7. I rounded it up to 4 stars. It doesn't do a whole lot new in terms of fantasy or in terms of characters or whatnot, but I had a really good time with it. This is Tara Sim's debut into adult fantasy. We're following 4 families, 4 very powerful families with different powers and sort of this, again, political undertone of this overarching power who just likes to F shit up. So I had a good time with this one. I honestly can't remember a whole lot about it. I read this right at the beginning of the month. I flew through this book for how big it is. It's only 543 pages. The font's fairly spaced out, but short chapters make an easy read. I didn't not like any of the families that we were following. There was probably one of the families that I didn't like as much, but it was entertaining. This was an entertaining book and I had a good time with it. Next up at 3.5, we had my last read of the month, which was A Touch of Light by Tiago Abdallah. Now, the execution of this book did not work for me as a reader, but all of the elements inside did. I think the author has made a stylistic choice to throw the reader in without any sort of backstory, without any sort of explanation as to why we're there. We're just in it. Now, I know that some other authors do that as well, and when I've experienced it in the past, there has still been a little bit of build-up to let me know at least why I'm there, which I did not get in this book. That being said, though, we're following 3 POVs, and if I were to take those POVs and look at them as individual stories and individual character arcs, they're all very, very enjoyable, which is why this still got a 3.75 in my books. I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. I believe it's meant to be a quartet. There is a prequel novella out called Prelude to Ashes, and I'm looking forward to see where it goes. This is going to have a full review here on the channel in about a week's time, so I'm not going to go too far into it now, but I had a good time. How many people in the audience are annoyed that I've done that? I'm a little bit annoyed that I've done that. Moving on. The next book I read, I don't have a physical copy of. It is still in the mail, and that is The Soul's Instruments by Mark Holloway. I was lucky enough to be on the ARC team for the second installment of The Aspect, and I had a great time with it. This book changes it up a little bit from book 1 in that we're following 2 POVs, and it has a much darker tone to The Soul's Aspect. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it, again, was different stylistically than the first book, but it did give our characters more grunt and more oomph, and we get to see them come into themselves a little bit, so that's always good in my books. And the world becomes much bigger than what we were introduced to in book 1. So I can only expect that world to get bigger and bigger as this story progresses. Now, the last book on this list and my favourite book of the month of May was Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. Are we shocked that this was my favourite? What Lee has done in this series is absolutely phenomenal. Jade Legacy really drilled home how talented Fonda Lee is at world building, at consistency, how good she is at throwing in those gut punches, those heart-wrenching twists and turns, really getting into the nooks and crannies of people's psyche within this world and helping us to understand that maybe these aren't the best people, but why they have made the decisions that they are. And this book is nothing if not a legacy. And even if I think I gave it a 4.5, so it wasn't a full 5-star read for me because there was still some language choices which personally didn't gel with me, but I cannot give it anything less than a 4.5 because it has brought in this whole cycle of the Greenbone saga so well. It's absolutely amazing. This book it just brought it all together. It showed what an impact this world has had, and it was just, I could talk about it in more detail, but that would go into spoiler territory. So I had a very good time with this, very, very impressed, looking forward to see what Fonderly does next. I know there is a novella that's come out. I can't remember what the name of it is. Annoyed. I can't remember what the name of that novella is, but I will put a picture on the screen. I just got an Audible notification to say that it was available for audiobook should I choose to listen to it. So, those are the books that I read in the month of May. What did you pick up and what was your favourite? Let me know in those comments down below. If you liked the video, give it one of these. If you want to see more of it, then click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next one. Ciao.